I'm a 22-year-old Brazilian male from a really small town, and in 2018 I moved to the capital of my state for study and work. In these 5 years, I've never had a sight of a creepy encounter or even a robbery. But last Friday, I had the worst experience of my life. At the start of 2020, I moved to this apartment complex. I live on the first floor of the first block, which makes the space behind my bedroom window a common area. And in these 3 years, same thing. All peace, no robbery around. Not many people walking behind the place looking inside, except some internet provider technicians and a trustful neighbor who eventually walks behind to make it to his bike faster at the start of the day. And people tend to ignore us living inside. They would pass, just minding their own business, talking to me only if I was in a different area of the apartment, a little porch in the living room. I currently live with 2 friends from my old town and my girlfriend. Last Friday, one of those friends went back to our town, leaving me, my girlfriend, and the other friend alone in the apartment. Around 3 a.m., me and my girlfriend came home from a bar that we like to go to every Friday. At this point, it was all normal. We came and ate something, took a shower, and rolled a blunt like normal couples do. In that time, my friend came home at around 3:30 a.m., making the situation even more secure for us, as usual. We invited him to smoke, which he denied because he was tired, so we decided to just smoke and go to my bedroom to get it on. During the deed, we hear some strange noises but end up continuing. In some moments, we want to change the position and hear again the noise of something sliding. So I looked at the windows and saw a guy's face, practically glued to the window bars watching us. Now I have a very short temper, which leads me into berserk mode, instantly breaking the window glass with my bare hands. I was really pissed and I ran to the kitchen to get a cutting knife while repeatedly screaming, "I'm gonna kill you." When my adrenaline subsided, I managed to calm down and called my mom to say that I was going to stay at her house for a few days in my old town. We're very scared and suspicious of the neighbor upstairs, as we saw him in the same place earlier, and I could recognize scars from freckles on both the window face and the face from earlier. However, without confirmation, we're left in an extremely uncomfortable position, not knowing exactly who the person is, and him knowing exactly who we are, him knowing that we were going to be late, and knowing where we live, etc. About the dude, the guy that we suspect was seen in the same spot earlier picking up weed ends. He looked into the apartment and chuckled. He's my neighbor upstairs and he doesn't work, he doesn't study. He kinda just listens to music all day and does drugs. As I have insomnia, I can often hear him arranging lines of coke and then snorting. And I hate the way that stuff makes me feel. Just a warning, everyone. This story has some controversial topics. Please read with care. So, to start at this story, I was best friends with a girl named Charlie for 3 years. I loved her and I thought that she loved me, but that wasn't true. 5th grade at primary school. Back in 5th grade, I had just been transferred to a new school. The whole class knew each other from the year before, and I was a complete outcast. I met Charlie at the school's open house, and apparently we sat at the same table. She was really nice and bubbly, and said that she would like to get to know me. I wanted a friend, and she was there. Sparing the details of awkward preteens trying to get through school, we became fast friends. We got each other's Skype and we talked day and night. We called nearly every day and would just talk for hours. She made me laugh and we could talk about anything. I also became friends with Charlie's friends, Catherine and Addison. We were a group of kids and we had fun. But things changed subtly over time. Charlie became more depressed, mentioning that she had been diagnosed with depression and anxiety disorders. I did my best to comfort her. What are friends for? I assured her that this didn't change anything, and it's a good thing that she was getting help for the issues. She agreed, but I don't think she really believed it. I'm not entirely sure when it started, but Charlie started venting to me about her emotions. I would always listen and try to help when I could find the words. I was her shoulder to cry on, and I was happy that I could help her in some way. I felt like repaying her for picking up the new nobody who wandered into her friend group. She never got better though. She started to get more extreme and more serious breakdowns. She would call herself worthless, claiming that she could tell her parents hated her. I had met her parents by that point, and they were loving people. They clearly cared about her, and I told her so. She called me a liar, saying that I should just leave her to self-destruct and stop pretending that I care. I was heartbroken, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The next day at school, she seemed to be doing better, smiling and joking with her friends. I tried to ask her about the night before, but she got a very serious look on her face and she sounded angry, telling me that it doesn't matter anymore. I didn't pry, figuring that she would talk about it later. That night, I asked her again, but I got a similar answer from before. I was confused but just went with it. I wish I hadn't. It went for months like that. Her breaking down, spiraling, calling me a liar, a cheat, and saying that I hated her guts. Any attempt to comfort her or deny the accusations were met with liar. It became a routine. Charlie broke the routine by adding something new. She started to openly hurt herself in school. When she would mess up, answer a question wrong, or sometimes for no reason, she would take a mechanical pencil and start scratching her arm, holding it just to show me and her friends exactly what she was doing. Whenever we would try to stop her, she would snap at us, saying to stop pretending we care and to shut up or to don't touch me. We didn't know what to do. We were just kids. The summer after 5th grade went pretty well. We seemed to be getting a bit better, with less spiraling and breakdowns. We talked every day, and before we knew it, the summer was over. 6th grade, middle school. We were a year older and in a new school. We were still the group, me, Charlie, Catherine, and Addison. This is when Charlie got worse again. She started having breakdowns during school, and she would openly hurt herself more. I was constantly worried for her. I don't think there was a full day that whole year that I could relax and not worry about her hurting herself. If memory serves correctly, I have a lot of trouble remembering these years in detail. It was the year that she first messaged me saying that she wanted to really hurt herself. She explained how she would do it, and how easy it would be, and how no one would care that she was gone. I was crying hysterically, trying to calm her down and say how much I cared about her, and how I didn't know what I would do without her. She ended the conversation saying that she wouldn't do it. I was beyond relieved and made sure to check up with her the next day at school. She insisted that it wasn't that bad, and that I had overreacted. I still insisted that she be honest about those feelings and tell an adult if she was really thinking about that. Charlie promised that she would. The rest of the year remained pretty consistent, with a steady incline in severity of her breakdowns, but slow enough that I hardly noticed the change. 7th grade. This was the year everything really hit the fan. This year is very fuzzy in my memory, so I'll just have to hit the main points. Charlie was starting to struggle in school. When she was immediately great at something, she gave up. She would stop trying. The open self-harm got worse, going as far as to shout at me if I tried to stop her. But she was still my best friend. I loved her and she loved me, right? We could talk to each other about anything. Except when I tried to vent to her, she would say that I was making it all about me. or that she couldn't handle it right then. If she was having trouble and I tried to relate to her issues and give advice, she would say that I was making it about myself and that I'm not her parent. This year, I started to really question my gender. I met my actual best friend and my now platonic partner, Liz. We were two broken trans kids so deep in the closet that we couldn't admit that we were trans. Liz was the first to come out, and I welcomed her with open arms, gushing about how much stuff we could do together. Charlie didn't like Liz. She was clearly jealous and thought Liz was taking me from her. I reassured her that I still cared about her, and that she was still my number one, but she didn't believe me. About the middle of the school year, Charlie said that she might have a crush on me, and she asked if I would be opposed to being her romantic partner. At the time, I was very in denial about my sexuality, and said that I wouldn't mind it. She seemed to take this as me consenting to some kind of relationship. She became much more touchy, hugging me, and even kissed my head or forehead a few times. I didn't know why at the time. These actions made me incredibly uncomfortable, and I wanted to shrivel up and hide. I now know it's because I'm touch-averse, but at the time, I hated myself for these reactions. I beat myself up inside for recoiling from my best friend, and how dare I get grossed out. I very quickly fessed up to the discomfort, telling her that I didn't actually want to date her, that we weren't together, and that I wasn't comfortable with the amount of physical contact she was giving. She seemed understanding, apologizing for being touchy, and even joking a bit about being touch-starved. At that, she started to get really distant when we were in person, and not just physical distance. She seemed to avoid talking to me for long, and made any excuse to shut me off. The nightly routine of breakdown Russian roulette, or whether it be a couple sentences or 4 hours, continued. There were a few different times that she had threatened to really hurt herself, and more than once she said it would be my fault. One particular standout night, she sent me a video. There was Charlie sitting in her bathroom next to the toilet. It would be so easy for me to just end it. I could drown myself in the toilet and no one would know. It'd be quiet and no one would care. My parents don't give a crap. I texted her over and over again, begging for her to not do it, saying that I loved her, her parents loved her, and that I'd miss her. I cried so much that I got dehydrated. I stayed up past midnight just waiting for her to respond, but she didn't, and I thought that she was gone. I thought that she had really did it and it was my fault, that I should have gotten to her sooner. I cried myself to sleep that night. When I got to school, I saw her walking into class and my heart nearly leapt out of my chest. I ran up and I hugged her. I wept and begged for her to answer, asking where she had been, saying that I thought she was gone. She chuckled. Geez, sorry, I forgot to check my phone last night. I felt like everything stopped. I just stared at her. This person who I had loved for years now, who I looked after, talked to, cared for, and couldn't live without, just laughed about it. I didn't know what to say. I was so dumbfounded that I just tried to act normal. My whole view of her shattered that day, and it was the beginning of the end. That year droned on, and I slowly started to push away from Charlie. I still cared deeply for her, but I couldn't take it anymore. Her breakdowns and ramblings and venting was daily, and I just couldn't handle her berating me. I felt terrible, like I was abandoning her. It felt like leaving a person with a broken foot to walk 1,000 stairs themselves, but I had to get away. I started talking to our mutual friends about what she did and was doing. They said that it was terrible and couldn't believe she would say such things. I showed them the conversations, feeling even more guilty for showing off our private text to other people. I had to prove it though. I had to make them believe me. In the end, I did get away from Charlie. I think my other friends did too, but they didn't do much for me. They shut me out, and while I was broken, healing from a 3-year-long wound, they talked about me behind my back, added fuel to my fire, only to tell me that I only ever talk about Charlie. I lost about all my friends that year. I tried to resettle back into my group of friends at first, but it wasn't the same as before. I was constantly worried that they were talking about me behind my back, and I was terrified that they saw me to be in the same level as Charlie. And so I left that group. It was for the best in the end. It's been a few years now, and I can say with certainty that I have trauma from all those years. This post is by no means detailed enough to capture the horrific experience that was my time as Charlie's friend, but I don't want to reopen old wounds. I am still great friends with Liz, and she honestly saved me from Charlie's reign of terror. Her kindness and friendship contrasted with Charlie's everything woke me up to how awful it was. I don't hate Charlie, despite all that she did to me. She was a terrible person and an absolute monster of a human, but we were just kids. I know that I'm not the same person I was back then, and I figure that she isn't either. Everyone deserves a second chance in life, but Charlie, let's never meet again. Just an update to add a little more detail to the story. Charlie was on antidepressants starting in the summer post 5th grade. She often blamed her outbursts on her unfit medication, or stating that I forgot to take my meds. I later found out that she had been lying. Her parents ensured she took her medication at the right time each night, and her forgetting was a complete lie, used to excuse her actions. Later in the timeline of abuse, 7th grade, she would say things like, "Don't even try, she'll be back soon," referring to herself during a mental spiral or a breakdown as a different person. This is also when she started to claim to not remember doing the things she did during breakdowns. I know for a fact that she was lying about this, because in private, she would admit to remembering and say how she's not really two different people. Every time, it was just used as excuses for her to be a horrible person. More often than not, she told me it would be my fault if she really did it. If I left her, whatever she did to herself afterwards would be my fault. And if I stopped being her friend, it would prove her right. And so I stayed. Those few nights that she stopped talking abruptly, I was horrified that she had did it, and it would be all my fault. I thought that her parents would get mad at me, screaming and crying at me for doing this to her daughter. But that day never came. I got out. I escaped her iron grip, and I have never been more thankful for having true friends who love me. I truly don't know where I would be now if I had stayed. During 8th grade, she was still in my school. We had the same math class each morning, and I did everything possible to ignore her. Sometimes I would see her in the hallway, or at lunch, and I just couldn't bring myself to look at her. At one point, we were outside on break and she was right next to me, but I couldn't look at her face. I felt like if I were to look, my eyes would burn, like looking directly at the sun. It would be easy to hate her for everything she did to me and others, but hatred only breeds contempt. I do hope that she has found a better life, but I dearly hope for my sake that we never meet again.